I'm here against my wish. प्रमोदाक खूब सांगपा ट्राय केलें अरे म्हाका हाडनाका हांगा म्हाका मातसो कुशीन दवर आनीक right from the beginning I have made efforts to stay away from becoming part of the media as much as to say that okay, I will give the initial irrigation to this enterprise, to this project, to this development in journalism, but keep me out. 10 वर्सां जालीं पूण तरी हांव भितर आसा, भायर सरपा ट्राय करता. हाजेर एक दोन उतर उलयता and then as it is not unexpectedly you are running late, like most functions do run late, so I will keep it as short as possible. Just to tell you from where I come, quay journalism or quay media or quay society, and where are we going? So 10 years ago, Prudent was born, but not in a hospital. It was born on the roadside. तेन्ना दोग तीग जाण आशिल्ले, तांकां सांगलें हांवें, पळय तुमी हें बिल्डींग बी तुमकां कांय मेळपा ना, तुमकां जाय तें सुरू कर, हे 2 आनी घे. So they started in a garage. Pramod and Sonia were not there. They were original founders of Prudent, if I may so. You'll see them today in the course of the day, but society changes. And we started with very, very humble beginnings. And then came, Arey, this is something good. We should continue this effort. And it went from garage to the ground floor to the first floor. And today, 10 वर्सां जालीं. So the date of birth was 10 years ago. Today is a big day. But there is a great day I'm looking for, and I'll mention that towards the end of my 10-minute talk. Now, talking about my thoughts on this, how am I thinking about all this? You see, my journey begins in Goa, where the maximum newspaper one could read in Portuguese was Diário de Noite. And that was a 4-page small booklet, like every day in the evening, 7 p.m. we used to get it. It did not have much news other than what the government wanted to write. And basically, you could not say in that paper, express any views. So to me, that was the beginning and birth of my newspaper reading. Of course, Herald was there, but I didn't lay my hands on it at that time. But then, having gone to Bombay, I could, and this is before liberation, I could interact reading Times of India. Then came Indian Express, and those were the eye-openers for me. And I took to reading, besides books, newspapers, and that's what my introduction to journalism is. To be fortunate, I laid my hands on the London Times. In London Times, my father was a subscriber to London Times, and very fine, light paper is to come from London every other day. So I could see what the great institution of the London Times was. And believe me, when I saw that, the first page of London Times, one expected to see headlines, like we have Times of India headlines. Today, there are no headlines. Today, they are advertising some textiles, some phones. And when I looked up at Hindustan Times, though before yesterday when I was in Delhi, it was difficult to find any information on news. The newspaper was full of advertisements. So what has happened to journalism? Or what has happened to print media? So when you see this shift in the society or in this situation of journalism, you begin to ask questions, because there is a memory which goes back to the 50s and which evolves over time, and then you see what's happening today. Now, having said that, my own personal experience of reading was these newspapers, and having also learned Marathi, Lokasatta म्हणटा हांव वाचतालो, and the Lokasattan बसून बरी news मेळटाली. When we would come to Goa, that news disappeared, because in Goa we did not have interactive journalism. Of course, we must remember one thing: Nehru was at the height of his power, And when he had a press conference, as Swaminathan Ankleshwari Iyer said, we only listened to him. We dared not ask him questions. Today, journalists are itching to ask a prime minister questions, but he won't hold a press conference. That was true of the earlier prime minister, but before becoming prime minister, they are having as many press conferences as you want, and they want to be heard. So press makes prime ministers, and the prime ministers don't attend to press. That's another thing that I am also finding when I observe things happening. Or very selective press insertions are done to keep the image up. That brings me to my lesson in history. I'm not a historian, I didn't study history very much, but as an engineering student, we had to do some history course. And this is what I heard on that, I read in the history books, and the professor also said it, and this was American history. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Constitution. Now, to us, Thomas Jefferson was a great statesman, and we can even bring Ambedkar, who wrote our Constitution. Sometimes we ponder, which is the greatest invention? Is it the printing press, which is brought to Goa by the Portuguese, or brought to Asia, first one, and still lying in Panji Museum, you can have a look at it. Printing press was revolutionary. Is it the internet? Is it electricity? Or is it our automobile, the internal combustion engine, or is it the airplane? So which is the greatest invention? Sometimes a thought comes to me, and I've not read this anywhere. This is my own. I think the greatest invention are the three magical words which Jefferson wrote, and Ambedkar followed 200 years later. We the people. You look at this as an invention that changes the society. Prior to that, you did not have these words. You had by the order of the king, by the emperor, so and so. And so suddenly, these three words changes society. Possibly more than internet, more than printing press, another time, more than electricity, all put together. Now, there's a lot of time needed to expand these words and then convey what I had in mind. But you're running late, and I think it can get also boring. So I'm coming back to the people who have to make the society. And media has to play a role. How do you steer this movement about the people? That brings me to Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Just like some of you, he was also an editor of a newspaper in South Africa. And he resigned. So the owner of the newspaper said, Mr. Gandhi, what is this? You're taking the responsibility of running this paper, and it is making a reasonable amount of money, it will survive. Gandhi said, no, I'm resigning as an editor because you are pushing me to get advertisement. And let me tell you, I've come to the conclusion that every advertisement is an encroachment on editorial. So I know some of you, and most of you, even Prudent and others, they run after government for advertisements. So in fact, the government is bribing you to be soft on the government. And some big advertisers are also arm twisting you to dare not speak the truth, or to mold the truth in such a way as to let the time pass, let the clouds go over. Now, so what do we do? How do we tackle journalism, and how do we tackle the media without advertisement? It's likely to happen, and I hope it happens sooner, because if it does continue like this, personally, I would not be interested in this business. I do call it business only for the sake of saying there should be some financial discipline, not for the sake of making money as such. So please understand, you will have to get away from the advertising model. And I wish some of the legislatures are here to say they shall not advertise, because then they cannot arm twist newspapers to go their way. And that's also would start the subscription models. So people pay for what they read and not somebody else and not some others who have another kind of a vested interest in the situation. So this is also one of my observations. Thomas Jefferson again, he, after writing the Constitution and the great words, "We the people," he was asked, you're so brilliant, you have developed these three institutions, three estates called the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive. And some people who didn't know all this says, but what would you remove if you had to remove one or of these estates? Means, would you get rid of judiciary? Would you get rid of legislature? Would you get rid of the executive? And his answer was, and some of you may know it, all three, as long as there is press. That was his finish line. Now, when he says as long as there is press, Gandhi, 100 years more later, adds that as long as there is free press, meaning the advertiser should not control the press. Some financial body should not control the ownership, like it's happening all over India and to some extent in Prudent and Goan media, definitely. So how do we divorce these forces which can affect free and fearless journalism? So you are 10 years old, you were born 10 years ago, but I tell you, before you are 20, if you don't carry out these reforms within yourselves and divorce the ownership or not have a business ownership which has interests and such cross connections, it won't rise to a level of an institution. When I say institutions, I look at small businesses sometimes. Why do they not survive more than 5, 10, 15, 20 years? In fact, one economist, Nobel Prize winner Paul Samuelson said, 95% of small businesses die in the first 5 years. Then you come to bigger businesses, like big corporations, Tata's, and then General Electric, and Exxon, and now you have IBMs, and a whole lot of big companies. I'm told they last more than 100 years. If you look at the Fortune 500, the first 20 companies still are there. So when you have big corporations lasting 100 years, who can last more than them? Yes, top universities of the world, whether it's Cambridge, Oxford, Harvard, Yale, Coimbra, they are 400, 500-year-old. Now, they are not controlled by any one family, or they're not controlled by the government. They are autonomous. So here's my message to you, that before you are 20, you should be autonomous. And you should involve Goa as your ownership in the form of a intellectually led cooperative movement. It shouldn't be across the whole Janta, maybe 1,000, 2,000, or 500 or 1,500 families and so on, who will then put together Goa. Otherwise, we will be at the mercy of the advertisers. We will be at the mercy of the certain scoundrels in the government, and it will never end. Goa will always say Goa was better in the yesteryears, and it's declining today. So keep that in mind as part of my inaugural address and part of my message. Sometimes you guys write too much and you speak too much. And that's one reason I try to keep away. And my thoughts go back to June 26, 1975. One day after emergency was declared by Indira Gandhi or by Sanjay Gandhi, whoever did it in the kitchen. I read an editorial. It was in Indian Express. And all the newspapers were clamped down upon by the Delhi government, Indira Gandhi's government, and all the editorials were censored. But there was one editorial which could not be censored. It was in the Indian Express. And that was the editorial that impressed me most. It continues to impress me today. It was an editorial space. There was nothing written in it. It was 2 inches by 8 inches, blank. Now the censors were dumb. They didn't realize the power of that editorial. So sometimes silence can be power. So that editorial, it still rings that freedom is precious. I will keep mum. For how long? Till 1977. And that is, according to me, the birth year of today's journalism. Otherwise, journalism was almost like government bulletins. You had exposés coming from 77 onwards. Of course, the electronic media wasn't around, but you had India Today, Indian Express went buoyant. You had a lot of weeklies coming up and a lot of journalists giving good content. And of course, with the content comes a lot of noise. And here is a lot of noise that's happening because creation of content, the costs have come so down that anyone talks and anyone writes. Another power of the press that I saw, in addition to that blank editorial of 1975, was the expose by Washington Post on President Nixon. They brought the presidency down. They brought Nixon down. The presidency still survives. And Nixon resigned because of these 2 journalists who carried on with meticulous planning the Watergate scandal. And Nixon finally had to resign, not because he wiretapped those people, because he lied. Last issue of the London Economist, which I sometimes glance upon, talks about lying in politics, in public life. So this has become very common, that I will build a wall and I'll make Mexico pay for it. Everyone knows it's a lie. It won't happen, and the person who says it also knows. But he says, it gets me votes. So somebody else will say this, somebody else will say that, and that's your vote bank politics. So let's keep that in mind, that lying has to be exposed by the journalists, and the people should be told, so-and-so is a liar. He may have an issue, he may want X or Y or Z, but he shouldn't lie. So that's very important. And I'll end this talk, because your session is now ready to start. In the 50s, we had this kind of an activism called, I'll call it executive activism or legislative activism. The judiciary felt left behind, and it came to the aid of the society by beginning their own activism, which we call judicial activism. Now, when such pillars of democracy take punches at each other, society suffers. Because in this battle, we have evolved a little in a wrong way. We have given a very old concept of Aristotle, the philosopher from Greece, of doctrine of proportionality. Today we want to cut you out, but not punish you a bit for an offense. Now, his doctrine led to Magna Cartas or laws of England, and then finally it said, we must punish you. If I slap you, you don't hang me. Or if I kill you, I don't get 1 year jail. So this proportionality is missing in our society, because suddenly we have given a bypass to the natural justice in many ways. And we have developed things like labor bench. In the Supreme Court, you had a labor bench. Now, then you had a green bench. Then we had a revenue bench. So where is the natural justice bench? And we have suffered as a result of tribunalization of India. So what the judiciary is supposed to do is this, but finally it ends up doing this because there is so much corruption to be tackled. They think that we'll need to do a little bypass to natural justice to tackle this corruption. I don't know where it's going to land up, but all of you are witness to what's happening. Now comes the last part of my talk, and that is going to change, hopefully sooner. Narendra Modi, Prime Minister, said that 1 billion internet connections by 2025 or 2022. I think Goa has maybe more than 10,000 internet connections. Having a connection is one thing. It's like having a phone, What do you talk on it? What do you use it for? Or like having a book. Do you really read it? Or you just look at the cover and say, I have this book. So Goa, when it does have 1 million internet connection, we would be ready to embrace the digital wave, get into education, get into information, and hopefully be a better society. So before your 20th birthday, please please adopt what I'm saying, because I don't want to be part of it by 2026. Sooner you retire me, better. Thank you.